Welcome to the Rise to Shine podcast with Noelle Custis, where we ignite the spark to discover your favorite self. It is time to get real, ladies. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Rise to Shine podcast with Noelle Custis. And today we're going to dive deep into powerful transformations that happen when we rise above our fears, when we embrace our purpose and level up in life. Today, we're going to have a real heart-to-heart about something that I know so many of us are struggling with, and that is resistance to change. I hope you're hearing me really clearly. And let me tell you, I thought I was going to be able to squeeze all of this into one episode, but I'm going to tell you this is going to be a two-part series because it is so good and it is that important. And it is something that has been on my heart for a while because I myself have struggled with this. I continue to struggle with this sometimes. And this is why we're just going to have a real heart to heart. We're going to get down to the nitty gritty, my friends. But I really just feel like, there are so many times that we are finding ourselves feeling stuck. We're falling back into old patterns and feeling like we are pushing against this invisible wall. We're just pushing and pushing and pushing. And I want to really talk about that today because I am noticing this so much with clients, with women that I'm talking to, with other podcasts I'm listening to, books that I'm reading. It just seems to be all over the place that this same message just keeps getting put out there. So I want to dive in today, but before we do that, I want to thank you for listening. And I definitely want to thank all of you that take the time to write a review or to rate our podcast. Again, this is how we get more people to be able to listen. This is all about the algorithm. And I am so grateful. And remember, during the month of September, I am on solo episodes giving away a free coffee, tea, or pastry on me if we shout out your review. So today, I love this one because it's exactly what I am hoping for is that someone finds out about this podcast through somebody else. And that is what this person said. So today's review comes from TR and it says, "Thank you for an incredible podcast. I found you through a friend and I'm so glad I did. I feel like you are speaking right to me. Maybe it's the age, or maybe it's just that as women, we are all going through the ups and downs together. I appreciate your honesty and your willingness to share. Thank you so much." That means the world to me. I so cannot wait to treat you to your coffee, tea, or pastry. So please make sure you reach out through the DMs or message me so I can get that gift card to you. And again, thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you to the friend that told this person about us over here in this little part of the world in the podcasting realm. So I want to get started because I really feel like as women, I know for myself, we are constantly evolving, whether it's in our careers as moms, wives, friends, or even in our own personal growth. There's always this new season that is awaiting us. And I've been on this journey myself for, I would say, really intentionally for the last 10 years. And I've been diving deep into leveling up all aspects of my life, really. I've really started to learn how to shift my mindset. I've been able to overcome so much of my anxiety, tapping into confidence. All of those things have been something I've really, really been working on. And let me tell you, some areas have felt so much easier to navigate than others. But then there are these other areas of my life that I almost feel like they love to fight back with me. For me, there's this one part of my life where I literally feel like I am a ping pong ball. I make progress, then I fall back again and again. It's this constant push and pull. And I know the tools. I've done the work. I've read the books. I've taken the courses. Heck, I have even taught a lot of this to a lot of other women. I told you I was going to get really transparent today and I was going to be really vulnerable. But in this one area, my brain and body just seem to want to rebel. And I'm not even a rebellious person, really. Well, in some areas, maybe as I've gotten older. I think that's happened. I certainly wasn't when I was a kid. But can anybody relate to that where it's like, what you're supposed to be doing? You know the tools, or at least you think you do. And maybe that's where I need to rephrase that. Yes, I know a lot of the tools, but I find myself pushing and pulling constantly. And I'm excited to say that I have recently learned some more tools. And that is why I thought, you know what? I'm getting on here. I've wanted to talk about this, but I hadn't figured out how I wanted to approach it. And after talking to a good friend of mine who has been on this podcast, Elizabeth Scarcella, she really helped me to understand some things on a deeper level through a conversation that we had. I should say several conversations. But maybe it is your career or your health or a personal goal. And there's a space where no matter how much you want it, something keeps holding you back. And over time, I started asking myself, why does this happen? Why can we be so great in some areas of our lives and feel completely stuck in others? For years, I thought it was about balance. Then I thought, well, maybe it's because I don't want it badly enough. And then after that, I just started to chalk it up to, well, I don't have the habit, or maybe I don't have enough willpower. But the more I researched, the more I realized that what's actually happening is rooted deep in our nervous system, our limbic system, and our brain. So today, I want to take you on this journey to really explore what I've learned about why we resist change, why we get stuck, and why, even with the best intentions, we fall back into these old patterns. And I'm going to be pulling back the curtain on my own experiences, sharing stories from incredible women that I've worked with, and diving into the science behind how our brain and nervous system are wired to keep us safe, but often end up keeping us from leveling up. And by the end of this episode, you're going to start to see that it's not about willpower, balance, or even habits. It's about understanding the deeper reasons for why resistance shows up so we can finally break free and step into the next chapter of our lives with, I would say, more power, more purpose. So I really want to get into this today because I know that some of you are ready to rise. And I want that for you more than anything. I don't want you to doubt yourselves anymore. I want you to do this stinking thing. So, like I said, here's the real culprit. If you want to take notes, that's great. If you want to settle into your drive, maybe you're folding that laundry, whatever it is, just know that the real culprit to all of this is our nervous system and our brain. So, we're going to get a little sciencey here. I am not a sciencey kind of gal, but don't worry, I've got you covered. We're going to break it down to where it's super easy and understandable. And we're going to talk about what's really going on when we're trying to level up and make changes. And then suddenly when we hit that wall of resistance. And no, it's not because you're lazy or you lack the willpower. So stop beating yourself up. That's the first thing I want to say. Stop beating yourselves up. What's happening is actually rooted deep in our body. And again, it's specifically in your nervous system and your brain. And guess what? It is trying to protect you, just not in the way you need it to. You're like, wait a minute, I don't want you to protect me. I want you to help me get over this. But let me explain how this works. From the moment we're born, our brains are like these little sponges. And I'm sure you've heard this before. Again, it's not, this part isn't rocket science. We are soaking up everything around us, how we're raised, the environment we grew up in, the beliefs our families and societies instill in us. This is what we're absorbing. And these early experiences actually serve a major role in shaping our mindset, in shaping our habits, and even the way we respond to things later in our lives. Things that happened to us before we were even in our teenage years can manifest their way out later on in life. It's really, really fascinating. If you grew up in an environment where safety and comfort were emphasized, or where stepping out of the box was seen as risky, your brain has been wired to prioritize stability and avoid uncertainty. Over time, this programming gets reinforced through the education that we receive and all of the cultural expectations and even the subtle or not so subtle messages from the people around us. It's true. So when we try to break free from those ingrained beliefs or habits as adults, it can feel like an uphill battle because we're essentially rewiring decades of programming. But here's the good news: you can reprogram your mind, but first you have to recognize where these thought patterns are coming from. So, as my friend was explaining to me, she said, this is why, for instance, some people are afraid of spiders and others are not. Because you could have grown up in a space where that's not what you were taught. You were taught to love all creatures. You were in that environment. And then there could be the opposite. So, I mean, that's just a simple example, but it shows that everybody's upbringing is going to be different. And therefore, we're going to have a different lens. And I want you to think of your nervous system as your guardian of comfort. When you try to make a big change, whether it's in your career, health, relationships, or even your mindset, like we talked about, your nervous system can see that shift as a potential threat. And here's the kicker: even in the positive changes we want, that can actually freak out our bodies because it's unfamiliar. So even if it's a positive change, that doesn't mean our brain registers it as a positive change because it's unfamiliar. And here's what happens: your nervous system is hardwired for survival. It doesn't care if you're trying to crush your goals. It just wants to keep you safe. It wants to keep you cozy and out of danger. So when you try to step into this new identity and you're trying to leave behind all of these old habits or break free from something that is, comfortable, it's in your comfort zone, your nervous system's alarm bells start to go crazy. And they start to say, danger, danger, change ahead. Cue in, and I know you've heard this on past episodes, the fight, flight, or freeze response. Even though there's no like tiger chasing us anymore, thank goodness. I know we talk about that from, back in generations, back to the cavemen, right? Our bodies still react as if there is. Maybe you have noticed this when you were trying to maybe launch a new project or you step out of your comfort zone. Suddenly, all of a sudden you're anxious and you're overwhelmed, and sometimes you may even feel paralyzed by it. That's your body saying, nope, not today. Let's just stay where it's safe. So what it's trying to do is it's trying to prevent you from moving in that direction. It's like it somebody said this to me, and I love this phrase just because my grandma says it all the time. It's like your nervous system is the ultimate party pooper. It's that friend who sees you picking up a new outfit and says, "Really? Do you need that? How about we just stick with the sweats that you've had for years because those are comfortable. We don't need to like level up into these, you know, glam dresses, right?" So then we shrink down and go, never mind, it's change. I like the sweats. I like the messy bun. Perfect for today because those of you that are not watching, I have that in today. And that's why. And then we go to the next part of it, and that's the limbic system. And this is what I'm learning so much about recently from research and friends and all of the experts. And some of you may know that my husband is a musician and he is also a DJ. So I like to say that the limbic system, because I love to use analogies, the limbic system is your emotional DJ. So this is the emotional center of your brain. Think of it as the DJ of your feelings. Okay. The limbic system's job is to keep you safe and emotionally comfortable. So anytime you start to attempt a major shift, it's there to remind you of the unknowns and fears that are lurking around the corner. So, if you've ever tried to make a change and suddenly, again, that anxiety and fear starts playing in your head like the worst throwback playlist, that's your limbic system. It's triggered by anything that's unfamiliar and it's wired to say, let's stick with what we know. And here's the kicker for this one, it actually stores emotional memory, which means that the limbic system holds on to your feelings and your beliefs and your experiences. So, this is where your feelings and your beliefs are stored. It loves to repeat patterns because, again, feels safe. Even if those patterns aren't serving you anymore, it is safe. So when you're trying to level up, your brain again is like, whoa, whoa, whoa. This isn't what we're used to. Let's go back to where it feels comfy. And just like that, we fall back into our old patterns. Is this sounding familiar? Well, there's also habit loops. We're going to talk about a couple more habit loops and why we keep falling back. Now, our daily routines are basically a set of our neural pathways in the brain that these have been just strengthened over time. We've talked about patterns and we've talked about how routines make such a difference in our life. We talked about with the golden hour method in a previous episode. Well, it's like well-worn trails in the forest. I want you to think about this. The more you walk those trails, the deeper those pathways become, right? So if we go on a hike and we're at a crossroads, we can tell what paths have been walked on more than the ones that haven't. And this becomes a deeper pathway that feels safe. We're likely going to pick that one. But when you start a new habit, like waking up earlier or exercising or focusing on your mindset, we're trying to create that new trail. But that is the hard work because if you were in a forest and you were going on a new trail, well, guess what happens? You're probably going to have to move away more brush. You're going to have to, you're going to end up getting scraped up a little bit more because it's not walked on as much. So the old pathways are still going to be the dominant ones. And your brain's default, I always say that default brain is to take the path of least resistance. This is why we fall back so easily when we are trying to make progress. You may be trying to walk that new path for a while, but the moment you get tired, the moment you get stressed, the moment you feel overwhelmed, your brain's like, hey, that old trail, it's still there. It's easier. Let's take that one. And boom, you're right back to square one. But here's the good news, because I'm not going to just sit here and tell y'all the bad news. Not that it's bad news, but that it's really one of those things that we have to really think about and give ourselves some grace in, but also recognize it, because I keep getting this question: why does this keep happening to me in this area? And this is where the science gets good. Because again, I'm not a big sciencey person, but this is where it gets good. So there's this thing called neuroplasticity, and it's the brain's ability to change and adapt. Even though those old pathways are dominant, your brain can create new ones. It just takes the repetition, it takes the consistency, and it is going to take, and what I've realized in a really big way, it takes patience to overwrite the old patterns. So I want you to think about it like you're paving this new road. The more you walk it, the more smoother it becomes. So when you catch yourself falling back into those old habits, know that it's not because you're a failure, it's because your brain is wired to take the familiar path. So the key is to keep showing up even if you trip up along the way. And I get it. It can feel so frustrating. I mean, seriously, why can't our brains just cooperate? This is what I'm always like, come on. It's like you're trying to have this glow up. You're like, I'm doing it. And then your brain's stuck in the sweatpants. Your brain is stuck in Netflix mode. But here's what I want you to remember: you're not broken, you're not failing. Your brain and body are just doing their job. They're trying to keep you safe. So, again, when we are aware and we start to be consistent, you can retrain your brain to support the changes that you want to make. Now, here's another thing. Our, as humans, I guess I should say, we actually crave pleasure and comfort. And then that's why we rebel against the hard stuff. So we're, again, naturally wired to seek pleasure and to avoid pain. And that is a survival mechanism. So when we do something that brings us joy or pleasure, or something as simple as eating our favorite snack or lounging on the couch, our brain releases dopamine, often called the feel good hormone. And this rush of dopamine makes us feel happy. It makes us feel content and comfortable, reinforcing that behavior, because to our brain, pleasure, get this, pleasure actually equals reward. But on the flip side, when we try to tackle something hard or uncomfortable or unfamiliar, our brain doesn't get that same dopamine hit. Instead, it signals that distress, or, making us want to avoid the task altogether. So, this is why, you guys, when you put that all together, this is why we're fighting against ourselves when we try to level up and push through that resistance. Our brains are constantly balancing pleasure and pain. Neuroscientists call this the pleasure pain principle. Say that a couple times. Pleasure pain principle, where the brain seeks to maintain equilibrium. So when we experience pleasure, we get that dopamine hit and everything feels great. But when we encounter pain, whether it's physical or emotional, our brain tries to pull us back to the pleasure zone as quickly as possible. And this is why When you start working on something hard or you start trying to create a new habit or trying to level up, you're going to find yourself procrastinating. I want you to pay attention to this. Is that sometimes you're going to find yourself procrastinating. You're going to find yourself scrolling on your phone, thinking about that bag of chips in the pantry. Your brain is simply trying to drag you back to what feels good. So the next time you're trying to do something hard, the next time maybe you're, as a teacher, I'm thinking, oh gosh, the times that I know needed to grade papers and I was just dreading it because I just didn't want to do it. I knew it was going to be a lot of hard work. What would I do? I would procrastinate. I'd be like, I feel like I'm a little snacky right now. And I would do anything to avoid it. And that is where your brain isn't registering that some of the hard things you're trying to do is a reward right away. In fact, it might feel like it's a threat to your brain's craving for comfort and joy. And then your brain and body start to ask, why are you doing this? Why are we leaving this cozy dopamine filled space for something that feels uncomfortable? And then again, this is the cycle, the pushback, the rebellion when you try to make a significant change. And it's not that you don't want it. And that has been what has been so confusing to me because I'm like, wait a minute, I want it. But it's that your body's natural inclination is to stick with what feels pleasurable to it and avoid discomfort at all costs. There is a role that's played, and that's the delayed gratification too. And one of the reasons why we struggle with doing the harder things is that many of the rewards associated with personal growth are, or just even the leveling up part of it, are delayed gratification. That's unlike the pleasure that we get, that instant satisfaction when we're scrolling on social media or eating a treat. The reward for things like that is instant. But building a business, working out, breaking old habits, well, guess what? That takes time. We are not satisfied immediately. We might feel really satisfied if we've been working out and we're exercising. We're like, man, that felt so good. You're getting that dopamine hit right after you take that class. You get in the car, you're like, oh my gosh, I feel great. Then you get on the scale the next morning and you haven't lost the weight that you were hoping to. And then bam, all of a sudden, you're like, wait a minute. I'm working hard. And yes, you felt that dopamine yesterday after the workout, but today when you got on the scale, you're not feeling that dopamine hit and you're feeling let down and it feels hard. And this is where the harder work does not provide the immediate dopamine rush. So your brain is like, why are we doing this again? And this is where we have to consistently push through and do the hard things because your brain will listen to me really loud. It will start to associate those actions with reward too. And this is where that neuroplasty comes into play again. But it is going to take that repetition, sorry. And it is going to take that patience. The more you do it, the more your brain rewires itself to feel good about the work you're putting in. And I know I'm repeating myself over and over again, but I really want you to hear this because, ladies, our brains are basically like toddlers in a candy store. They're running around screaming, I want the sugar, while you're over here trying to give them some broccoli and a yoga mat. It's no wonder why we feel so much resistance to the hard stuff. Our bodies literally want to keep us in the comfort zone in that feel good dopamine bubble. And again, it's not personal failure, but we treat ourselves as though it is and we beat ourselves up as though it is. But I think if you learn about how your body and your brain and your limbic system works, you're going to start to overcome what has been holding you back. And if you've been feeling stuck, please know that you're not alone. I have been here. This is why I'm doing this episode, and I'm making it 2 parts, because I can tell you it's not just about wanting it enough or pushing yourself harder. It's about understanding what's happening under the surface and how years and years and years of programming and our natural cravings for the comfort can make this feel like an uphill battle. But we're going to retrain that brain. We're going to work with our nervous system, and we're going to break free from these patterns that have held us back. We're going to do this together. And now I know what you're probably thinking. Okay, Noelle, this is all great, but how do I actually start to change it? Well, that's where the magic happens in part 2 of this mini series. In the next episode, we're going to dive into the practical strategies and tools that are going to help you overcome this inner rebellion. We're going to shift those habits and rewire your brain for success. And we're going to explore how to work with your nervous system and to strengthen those neural pathways and finally start to get some tools on how to break free of the resistance of holding back. So if you're ready to stop the back and forth and truly make some progress, you're not going to want to miss this next episode. This is where we're going to get into those steps. And we can start to overcome this internal tug of war and step fully into the life that you've been dreaming of. And trust me, this is the part where the breakthrough happens. So I want you to really sit with the idea that the resistance you feel is, again, not a personal flaw. You haven't failed. It's not a lack of discipline. It really is how we're wired. So I am super excited. And if you're eager to start applying these concepts now, we're going to not only have part 2 in this series, but I'm also hosting a free workshop where we're going to dive into my signature framework, the Golden Hour Method. And this is really a life-changing tool designed to help you reclaim your time, reset your mindset, and create a soul-filled hour of intentional action each day. So listen to these 2 episodes. You can even go back to the episode about the Golden Hour Method, and we're going to actually start applying that. We're going to start applying it. If you're ready to say yes to you, it's the perfect next step to everything we're talking about here. And I would so love to see you there. We're going to be doing it on October 1st and October 15th. These are going to be live workshops on Zoom. So there will be a part for Q&A. All the details are going to be in the show notes for the registration. It's super easy. You can follow me on Instagram and get updates. But trust me, this workshop is really going to help you break through the resistance and start taking the steps toward the life that you've been dreaming of. Resistance is not going to be a stop sign for you. It's just a speed bump. And you have everything it takes to rise above it. So until next time, keep rising, keep shining, and know the best is yet to come. And I'll see you on episode 2 of this 2-part mini series. And I hope to see you at the live workshop. All right, guys, talk to you soon. Thanks for joining me here today. Your presence means the world to me. If you enjoyed what you heard, please consider leaving a rating and review. And don't forget to follow or subscribe so you never miss an episode. Head to the show notes and let's connect. Rise to Shine Co. is ready to support you in coaching, collaboration, life tips, or even a coffee chat. Until next time, keep shining, my friends.